Calvin Thompson, native Detroiter born in Black Bottom from parents that were part of the Great Migration of blacks from the South, specifically Mississippi. He is an author, motivational speaker, and host of The Thompson Report, a radio show on the Live Network that caters to conversation about the renewal and transformation of the mind.
Welcome to the Conversations with Kai Mann show. I'm your host, Kai Mann, and this is the show where we bridge the gaps one story at a time. And today I am sitting here with Mr. Calvin Thompson, author and newly talk show host. How are you doing, Calvin?
I am doing very well. This is a great day.
Awesome.
Yes,
awesome.
Indeed. It's good to be here. Good to be alive at this critical time in the history of the world, you know.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Well, in the show's intro,
yes,
we give your bio so everybody knows exactly who you are and what you've done.
Okay.
But what we want to know is, who is Calvin Thompson at his core?
Calvin Thompson is a man that's devoted to serving God and being a friend of humanity. I am one who have had my struggles, my challenges, and my story is your story as well. I know that I've been through a lot, and so have a lot of people, but my job is to help you not just go through it and don't be stuck within yourself. Being a person who has experienced an emotional breakdown 40 years ago, and having come through that storm, now it's my time to give back and assist others who are going through this storm. A great minister told me something that resonates through my mind. He said that God will put you in a situation, bring you out of it, then put you back in that situation to help others. That is my assignment.
Wow.
To help others.
Wow. That's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people, when we go through certain things in life, they find it hard to kind of not only come out of it, but once they do, to absolutely share that information with other people.
Mm-hmm.
How hard has it been for you to share that information with other people?
Well, it's been hard to share it up to a point, because I've been a recipient of mental health services, but I've also been a servant to extend mental health services to countless others. My first episode occurred 40 years ago, back in 1976, when I was 21 years old. But God brought me out of that situation. I had another episode 3 years later, but I was determined to prevail with myself. And one thing that I discovered in the process, that I went from a country club setting to a state facility in that interim, and going through from a country club setting to a state facility, you found out that my situation, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was. I just had to do what I had to do.
Right.
You know, the biggest thing that you realize about having mental health is that you have to flow with it instead of being oppositional to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a situation, you can't be City Hall. You have to be humbled by the situation as opposed to being humiliated.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the biggest thing that individuals have to contend with, is that how do you deal with having mental illness? First of all, you flow with it and you grow with it, you know, as opposed to trying to not being compliant, rejecting yourself, and rejecting others' assistance that they extend to you. But if you flow with it, it tends to do better.
Yeah. And I know a lot of times we in the African American community, we have a hard time with dealing with mental health issues.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that you work in that setting. What have been some of the difficulties that you've seen that some of maybe the people you've worked with, their families have issues with?
Well, the biggest thing that people have to do is accept the fact that this is something that has occurred to you, just like you can have high blood pressure or diabetes. It's a medical condition that manifests itself in the brain chemistry. So when you come to realize that it's something that happened to you medically, not something that you wished upon yourself, or not that you're inherently weak, it's just something that happened to you. That's part of the human experience. So people have a hard time accepting the fact that they have to see a psychiatrist, which was my experience initially, or that they have to be medication compliant. Mm-hmm. They reject that because who wants to be sick? But when you shift it from being, you take the medication because it allows for you to be well, or not because you're sick, you tend to do better.
Right.
So a recurring thing in mental health is medication compliance.
Mm-hmm.
So once people accept the fact is that you have a medical condition that warrants the use of medication to assist you, then you tend to do better. But as long as you hollering and kicking and screaming and going against that paradigm, you tend to fall through the cracks, and your situation goes from bad to worse.
Wow.
So if we can just get people to understand that it's important to be medication compliant to deal with the medical aspect of it, then you tend to focus on the other issues as well. Mm-hmm. But the first critical need is that a person has to be medication compliant. Because if you have high blood pressure, they tell you to take your blood pressure medication. Or if you're diabetic, in those contexts, you would say that people be diet compliant or take your medicine.
Right.
Take your medicine and it flows better.
Right.
You know?
I know that I've had some people that I've known that may have had some different issues, and they've had to take the medication as well. And for some people, I've noticed that when they do and they think that they feel better, they no longer want to take it. What makes a person no longer want to take that medication, even though they know that they have to take it in order to stay, balanced or whatever the case may be?
Well, I think that's common with people when they don't understand that you have something going on inside you that you have no control over, I think what happens, that was my case. The second episode was precipitated by me being non-compliant because my objective was to say, well, I can make it on my own. I don't need the doctor, I don't need the medicine, I'll be fine. But that's the misnomer, that's the misconception. You got something going on inside of you that you have no control over.
Right.
So when you take the medicine, it tends to help you deal with the symptom management or the disease process.
Right.
When you don't take the management, then the symptoms recur. Now, it'd be nice if you can take the medicine and cure the situation, but you're really talking about the maintenance or the disease management, as opposed to saying being all over the place or being in and out the hospital. Your goal is to promote wellness, and the medication comes in the form of the medication is designed to promote a wellness within you.
Okay.
Not because you're sick. You have to get out of the concept that you're taking it because you're sick. Take it because it promotes wellness.
Right. Well, I want to delve into something a little bit more. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take a break, because I believe this will be something that we'll need to delve a little bit deeper into.
Okay.
And I don't want to get into that before we go to break.
Okay, great.
So this is the Conversations with Kai Mann show. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. We're talking with Calvin Thompson.
Focus, the state or quality of having or producing clear definition. Focus One Entertainment is the premier videography company in the Midwest. We specialize in weddings, corporate events, documentaries, sporting events, and films. Regardless of the scope or budget, we approach every project the same way, by capturing and clearly defining your vision. Contact us at 313-444-3638 or www.focusoneEntertainment.com.
And welcome back. This is the Conversations with Kai Mann show. I am sitting here with Calvin Thompson, and we're talking today about a plethora of things, but first mainly we're talking about mental health issues. Before we went to break, I started thinking about the fact that, early on when you said who you were at your core, and you talked a little bit about being a man of God.
Yes.
Now I know that, as far as the African American community, we already have some type of issues or stigmas about mental health issues.
Right.
But once we go into a church setting, there's a whole other set of issues that we kind of have to combat as well, because of the fact that we believe in God, and we think that God cures all things, because in some aspects that is the case. But what are your feelings towards being in a church and having mental health issues? What are some of the stigmas that you can kind of gain or from your spiritual leaders?
Well, the thing about it, I remember early on in the initial phase, and when I first became diagnosed with being mentally ill and all that, I went to my minister, my uncle, who is a minister, and we discussed that. The first thing I said, I didn't want to take the medicine. Well, he said something plain and clear. God can work through the medicine. He works through the doctors. And I think the biggest misconception that people have to kind of realize that sometimes, because of where we are and where we are not, we're not at that point where we can just wish things away or pray it away. Sometimes we have to come reconcile within ourselves, because we're so far off the mark and our understanding and appreciation of our divine qualities, that we're really more in a point where we have it skewed away from the path. So therefore, we don't have it within ourselves at this point in time to resolve it just through prayer alone. So therefore, I would confront and assure the ministers that you have to understand that this is something like, if you take medicine for, again, the paradigm, if you take medicine for high blood pressure, which a lot of people do take medicine for high blood pressure, or to take because they're diabetic or any other medical issue. If you ignore the symptoms and say, well, I'll just pray about this, then you're at risk for catastrophic results. Your body is designed to maintain its own equilibrium that we will admit to, but when it doesn't, you require medical intervention. So if you can accept the fact that a person has to take medicine for high blood pressure, again, that model, because that's something people are more familiar with it, or anything else, any other medical condition, if you take the medicine for that condition, then the condition tends to be managed better. But if you don't take the medicine for that medical condition, then you're at risk for falling through the cracks. What do I mean falling through the cracks? It will not be stabilized. You will be more at risk for destructive behavior or destroying somebody else. You have to be able to maintain your thought processes, and your thought processes, when they're all over the place, they cannot be reconciled or reeled back in just on your thought alone or your wish or your prayers. You have to have the medicine to deal with the medical aspect of things that's going on in your brain chemistry that you have no control over. So it's about being humble about the situation as opposed to being humiliated.
Good.
And I think the big thing that people say, well, I have this condition because it's a curse, or because God has a vendetta against, that God is being vengeful toward me. No, you had a medical condition because this is a medical condition.
You talk about in your book the renewing of the mind.
Yes.
Talk to us about what that really means, to renew your mind.
Well, in more concise terms, the title it comes from a scripture: "Be not conformed to the world, but transformed by the renewal of your mind." Essentially, it means that you're focusing more on things that will accentuate you or liberate you from the seemingly quagmire you're in. You're stuck within yourself, because when you're into the worldly orientation, that may not be sufficient for you to resolve your issues alone. You must incorporate something within you, or use skills that you have to keep yourself where you need to be. When it comes to feeling depressed, discouraged, or diseased, those are a state of mind. But when you come into awareness that you can resolve those issues through talking about it, discussing, sharing, that's where the psychosocial aspect of your being has to be utilized. Your spirituality, you must go to yourself and understand just how dynamic you can be. The Bible talks about letting this mind be in you that is also in Christ Jesus, who being a form of God, not consider robbery to be equal with God. In part, we must understand that we have greatness inside of us that is yearning to be expressed. But if you allow yourself to be consumed with your problems, your distress, your dis-ease, and depression, you won't get there. So you must focus on things that will enrich you. That's where you have to have a different mindset. Like they say, nothing can be changed at the same level of thinking they created. You must go to another level within your thinking, another level within yourself.
Well, that I totally understand everything that you are saying, but for the person who finds it hard when they're depressed or going through life's issues, what can we share with them to help them change their thought process so that their minds can be renewed, so to speak?
Well, we're dealing with a concept that they call spiritual psychology. That's in which you incorporate your spiritual qualities and your thought processes to help you, assist you on your journey. You must realize and recognize that there's parts of you that are yearning to express itself. That's when it comes to a renewed mind. That's when it comes to, as the Bible says, peace be still and know that there is a God within you. You must realize that you have the ability to overcome yourself. But first of all, that's why there's important to talk about things, to discuss your feelings. And I think a lot of times a person's trying to be all tough and like, I can resolve this alone. Sometimes you need help. Sometimes you're in quicksand and you don't know that you're trying to make a move, you're trying to resolve an issue, but you must allow yourself to be privy to something else. And that's where the psychology comes in. You must have somebody that you sit down and talk to, like a dear friend. Somebody that you're willing to share yourself and your experiences with and say, well, okay, now this is what's really going on with me. And I know sometimes in our community we have an aversion to dealing with people that are outside the ministry or outside what appears to be the spiritual realm, but you must use both skills.
Okay. Well, we're going to go ahead and we're going to take a break and we'll be right back.
Okay,
this is the Conversations with Kai Mann show.
Yeah.
We'll be right back. Welcome back. This is the Conversations with Kai Mann show. I'm your host, Kai Mann, and today we are talking with Calvin Thompson. Calvin Thompson is an author as well as a newly talk show host. We are talking about mental health. We're talking about renewing of the mind. We're talking about some spiritual things as well. Now, before the break, we were talking about renewing of the mind and our thought process. We kind of touched on it from a spiritual aspect of it. But what about the person who doesn't even know what a spirit is? How do we talk to those people and try to get them to renew their mind? How do we get them to change their thought process?
The interesting thing about it, that's just where we are right now. People have been, to borrow from the title, they have been conformed to the world. So you come to them about spiritual matters, there's an aversion to it, or there's a lack of awareness of the fact is that you have greatness inside of you. So therefore, that's why there's important to incorporate, to fuse the two, the psychosocial spiritual aspect of yourself. Because when you get to a person who is at least open-minded to the process, is that there's an alternative to what they're doing. Because sometimes when a person going in circles, they cannot see the forest for the trees. They cannot see a point of resolution. But if you can at least address them where they are at their baseline, they tend to be more receptive to the process. Because if you're talking to a person about spirituality and they have no even construct of what spirituality means, especially in the practical aspect of it, you can tell people about Jesus being the Son of God, but until they realize and recognize that they're also a child of God too. The Spirit of the Lord is omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient. It's everywhere. So why wouldn't it be in you? But if a person doesn't understand that issue in a remote fashion, you at least have to deal with their psychosocial needs. That's when it comes to the point, well, hey, can we talk? Can we discuss what's going on with you? Because even though a person can be distraught, dis-ease, and discomforted by a situation, they still want a resolution.
Right.
They may self-medicated with drugs and alcohol. They may have anger management issues, but nobody wants to be off the mark all the time because people tend to avoid you, and we're designed to be sociable by nature. So really, the natural tendency is for us to be part of something. Nobody really wants to be out of the loop. Even though they may project all this toughness and avoidance of things, we all want to be a part of something. So therefore, you have to deal with them in terms of saying, hey, how you doing? How you feel? How you rest last night? You have to embrace people instead of record them, because the natural proclivity of things is to be part of something. That's why people do what they do. They want to be part of something, but sometimes you get lost in the sauce. And forget about the fact is that you have a higher function instead of being on a low frequency. You must focus on something that we can bring the people back into the fold. That's where you have to be inspired and motivated.
Right.
And encouraged.
So let's talk about a little bit about you, Calvin Thompson, and how was it for you being in the space that you were so many years ago and being able to renew your mind,
yes,
and being able to transform into this person that you are now?
Well, that within itself was really something that I wanted to do and needed to do, because for one thing, I was so young, and I was young with a family. I was young and I had children that were young. So therefore I looked at them and I said, I had to get myself together. I was doing okay until I crashed, so to speak. I was doing very well. I was going to school and working. I was on track to do a lot of things. But because of the ignorance of things, not knowing that it's okay to talk about your challenges or your being destroyed or feeling overwhelmed, that it's okay. I kept everything inside of me. I didn't reach out, and my father and I were estranged from each other at the time, and I didn't know how to talk to my mother. It never occurred to me. My mother and father were still engaged in dialogue about me. I didn't know how to talk to anybody. I didn't know how to talk to myself. Maybe if I would have had a pet, maybe if I would have done the things that I'm doing now, I could have avoided the breakdown.
Right.
If I was maybe into exercise, meditation, prayer, things that I acquired a affinity for later in life. But if I would have known these things, that would have been like an ounce of prevention being worth more than a pound of cure,
Right.
But see, the things that I experienced, when I deal with people, I can be compassionate and understanding and patient with them, because I know what it feels like to be caught up within yourself in an emotional storm and can't see a resolution. But there's times when people, they can see your plight, but then, they may know how to reach out and help you. But being in a position of being disenfranchised, disillusioned, discouraged, and all caught up with myself, you see those signs in another person, and you say, wait, how can I help you, and be more compassionate and patient and willing to deal with them at their baseline. Because you can't always come into the situation like, I have the answer for you, because a lot of times people don't know that there is an answer. The answer is within the person, but they have to be receptive to the process. It's like what Jesus said, the message for those who have the ears to hear and the eyes to see. We have to reach out to people. It's a must. We have to be there for them. They help them help themselves.
Right. So, in the case of you being younger and you realizing that you had to do something different.
Yes.
What was the thing that you did different? And I'm asking you this question because if we have an audience who going through some of the same issues, some of the same symptoms or signs that you were going through, they can recognize them within themselves.
Yes. Well, first of all, the big thing about it is to be humbled by the experience as opposed to being humiliated. And I say that to say this. you have to be humble enough to say, well, if this is what it takes to stay well and be productive, then take the medicine. Instead of saying, I don't want to see the doctor and I refuse to take the medicine because I can do this on my own. But some things are much bigger than what you are. When it comes to the medical aspect of mental illness, you have to flip the script and say, this is what it takes to stay well, you know.
Right.
Taking the medicine is the first criteria that you have to be compliant with, you know. And then you have to get with a doctor that works for you, you know, a doctor that listens to you and hears you. And then you have to listen to yourself and hear your feelings and emotions as well, you know. The medication compliance is important, and the right doctor for you.
Right. We're on that note, we're going to take a quick break. This is the Conversations with Kai Mann show. I'm your host, Kai Mann. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Focus One Entertainment is Detroit's premier entertainment company. But we're not just an entertainment company. We are your #1 multimedia resource. Focus One has combined years of talent and experience in order to bring you what you're looking for in a video, a polished professional product. F1 Entertainment specializes in filming workshops, seminars, and corporate presentations. More and more businesses are utilizing video production services to create web virtuals, online marketing content, and promotional and corporate training videos. Your company can do the same with Focus One Entertainment. Contact Focus One Entertainment at 313-444-3638 or visit us on the web at www.focusoneentertainment.com.
The Get Naked movement is about keeping it real by addressing those issues we want to keep on the hush, but it's necessary to talk about in order for us to heal. So, join the movement. #Get Naked.
And this is the Conversations with Kai Mann show. I'm your host, Kai Mann. We are back. This is the show where we bridge the gaps one story at a time. And today we are talking with Calvin Thompson. We're talking mental illness. We're talking renewal of the mind. We're talking transformation. There's one thing that I really want to talk to you about.
Sure.
And that is there are, and I say this because I have 3 sons. And I know that men are not always one to talk to one another about issues that they're going through. And I can imagine that for men that it is a lonely road to have different issues going on and not have anyone to talk to about those things. How do men begin to have those conversations with one another? Hey, you know, I think there's something going on. I'm not sure. How do we allow ourselves to be authentically us and not, you know, feel ashamed about those things?
Well, you know, that's so important. Man must be okay with the fact that they're not, when you talk about your feelings and emotions, that's okay. Because God gave you your feelings and emotions as a sense of checks and balances. Because if you want to know what's going on with you, why you feel the way you look at your line of thinking and your mode of thinking. I think a lot of times man get caught up in that machismo or that I ain't no punk or no chump, I can't talk about this. But really, man need the same thing that anybody else need. They need to know that at the end of the day that they will be okay. They need to feel that they're appreciated, that they have value beyond the material side, the physical side, or superficial. Man to come together and talk about sports all day long, as a rule. With exception, as opposed to talking about their feelings, their pains, their limitations, their fears, their doubts, their insecurities. Because think about it, you don't want to be no chump or no punk. I'm just saying it because that's the colloquial assessment of it. Is if I talk about this, then I'm inadequate. And then you got to realize you don't have all the answers all the time. And everything is not always well. But if you approach it with the mindset that, I'm glad I have somebody to talk to about just how I feel as opposed to what they need to hear or what they feel that I should say. Talk about what you need to talk about and be okay with it, because that promotes health more so than dis-ease. A lot of times people fail to realize the biggest thing that's going on wrong with you is something that you created in your thinking. Because your situation go from a molehill to a mountain so easy. But you have to focus on managing your life, managing your affairs. And the most important thing you can do is discuss and share how you genuinely feel. Now, some people say, well, if I tell you this, I had to bury you in the backyard, in a sense. But see, really, you have to have people around you that are receptive to the importance of the process. I'll say this to you, but you my confidant, you my friend, you have my back unconditionally. That's what helps when people realize that people see the value of what you're saying, even though you may not have all the answers, or you may be at a low point, a low frequency, but we're in this together. And I think once man comes to realize the fact is that it's okay to talk about just how you feel, yay or nay, and that you do have receptive hearts, but some people just don't want you to know that they're catching it, and they want everything, the facade, everything is okay, but everything may not be okay all the time, you know,
Right.
and it's not okay all the time. Sometimes the glass really is half full.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you want it to be or not. But then the realities of things, there is a point of resolution. But if you get to the point where you're willing to discuss yourself and you do what your feelings open and honest and candid, you tend to do better.
Right, that's true. That's true. And on the flip side of that, you know, we have to, or people in general have to allow others to be able to have that conversation as well.
That's right, yeah. And to be okay with the fact is that we are communal people by nature. We're designed to be a helpmate to one another. We're not designed to be avoiding one another or to be repulsed by one another. We're designed to actually embrace one another and be okay with it. It doesn't make you inferior, inadequate to have a challenge, because everybody have a challenge, whether they want to or not.
Right. This is 2016. There is so much going on in the world. So much going on in the world.
Yes,
how do you define what's going on right now?
well, in one aspect of it, there's a crisis of mental health issues, but it's rooted in a spiritual disconnectedness. If we really understood how valuable we are and nice, and the Bible says we're made in the image and likeness of God. That's in the scriptures. Then it goes on to say you must be able to remember this, as a man thinketh in their heart, so they are. And when we realize the fact is that the thoughts that we think and entertain are so important, they become prophetic in nature because we act on our predominant thinking. And when we come into a realignment and awareness that just like the scripture, let this mind be in you, there was also in Christ. And I use Christ Jesus as the universal construct, not that it's the only absolute construct, but that's the one we're most familiar with. When we understand the greatness inside of us and operate from that vantage point, we tend to do better. But if we look at ourselves as being inherently inept and capable of changing our life and our circumstances, then we tend to go from a hero to a zero, you know. But we're working on ourselves daily. We must work on ourselves daily. Now, even Paul say, daily I die to the carnal or the fleshly mind. We have just take it one day at a time. It may seem simplistic and short-sightedness, but just take it one day at a time, one step at a time. Don't try to do it all at once. Work on yourself daily and be okay with it.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. We are going to take another quick break. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back. This is the Conversations with Kai Mann show.
Focus. The state or quality of having or producing clear definition. Focus One Entertainment is the premier videography company in the Midwest. We specialize in weddings, corporate events, documentaries, sporting events, and films. Regardless of the scope or budget, we approach every project the same way, by capturing and clearly defining your vision. Contact us at 313-444-3638 or www.focusoneEntertainment.com.
One of the things that I've dealt with was depression. Feelings of sadness and loneliness from what I used to have. Most of us feel depressed at times. That's normal. But when it lasts more than 2 weeks and it begins to interfere with your daily activities like work, school, or taking care of the kids, that's when you should talk to a professional. 3 to 5% of most people suffer from depression. It wasn't until I addressed what was going on inside of me, and instead of suppressing it, that my life changed. Talk to someone. You matter. Join the movement. #GetNaked.
And we are back. This is the Conversations with Kai Mann show. I'm your host, Kai Mann, and today we are sitting here with Calvin Thompson. We have talked about mental health. We have talked about the renewal of your mind. Now I want to really talk about the transformation piece of it. Mm-hmm. And I think when we talk about the transformation piece of it, this has been the part where we have had the issues that we deal with, because we all have mental health issues.
Yes, we do.
Everybody has mental health issues, regardless of what they think the definition of it is. But after we have, been able to change our thought patterns, now what does that transformation now look like? What does it look like to transform after we have actually renewed our mind? What does that look like?
It shows up within you. When you look in the mirror, it shows that you looking at yourself from a different vantage point. You're looking at yourself from the perspective is that, yes, I can, as opposed to there's no way I can change my condition because I'm determined to do what I do. But I think once you come into a great realization that you can achieve those things that you desire to do, and people have come into your life because it's consistent with the theme of the law of attraction. You attract to you what you are. But people in their heart of hearts know they deserve better than what they're getting out of this, especially when you call it in a dis-ease state of mind or a state of discord or dysfunction. Inherently, people want to do better, and they know they deserve better out of themselves. So the real change comes from within you. When you're willing to accept the fact is that I am a hot mess and I know it, but I want to do something about it.
Right.
When you're receptive to that process, after working in mental health for so long and being a part of the mental health process myself for so long, it's time out for mental illness. It's time out for mental wellness, and wellness is a state of mind. You can have healthcare reform from the structural, from the external infrastructure, but the greatest thing of innovation is within you.
Right.
You must work on yourself daily and be okay with it, because you are phenomenal by nature. I know a scripture says that we born in sin and shaped in iniquity, but there's another scripture on another continuum that says that we are made in the best of molds, a little bit lower, a little bit higher than angels. So we focus more on elevation and be open to the process, we tend to do better. I think it's a closed mind that produces a lot of these diseases, dis-ease, I should say, this distraught, the depression, the spirit. But when you open yourself up to the possibilities that you have, unlimited potential that you have, and the spiritual realm, you tend to do better. But when you close your mind and say that you will never be what you will never be no more than anybody else or anything else on the low frequency, but when you focus on elevation, you tend to open yourself up to other possibilities, unlimited.
Right. And you touched on a lot of good stuff in that. It was a lot. It was real good.
Okay.
You talked about elevation. You talked about basically us renewing our minds in a sense to where we know who it is that we are, and that we know that we can do. We are, you said, a little bit higher than what the angels are. I think a lot of people have a problem with not knowing who they are and not knowing that they are more than what they, that they profess to be, or that what they can have ever imagined. How do we get people to really understand that you are so much more, and that you can actually, you're not just potential, that you're way more than potential once you put some action into it? How do we begin to help people see that they are more than what they are?
Really, that within itself is a process. A lot of times in group, but I've always focused on individuals realizing we have groups here in this setting. But I encourage you to go home and weave that into the fabric of your home as well. We have to get used and accustomed to stay, instead of being in a confrontational attack mode, be more in a receptive mode. We can agree to disagree and still be agreeable. We must learn how to realize the fact is that we are awesome by nature and put more emphasis on that. I think that the service that we have been done is that we've been told so much about the limitations that we have believed it. But what you have become familiar with is the fact that when people tell you something, it has to be reinforced over and over. So get accustomed to seeing yourself in a more positive light. Get more accustomed to seeing yourself as somebody that can do just what you desire to do. But we have to nurture that within one another, as opposed to saying, well, you can't do it. We have to say, yes, we can. We have made phenomenal, even in the midst of adversity in our society, all that. We have a president that looks so different than everybody, the traditional president has looked. And now we're going to have another president that will look more different than even the previous one. Right. So when you think about the fact that when they say that it cannot happen, that's a mindset. When they say that it can happen, that's a mindset too. So we have to have a change in venue, not just externally, but within ourselves. That's where the renewal of the mind comes in. That's where the transformation comes in. But you're looking at yourself in a different venue altogether. Going inwardly, instead of going outwardly for validation, go inward for validation.
Thank you. And we're going to take another quick break. We will be right back. This is the Conversations with Kai Mann show. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
One of the things I've dealt with was low self-esteem due to body image. Growing up, I thought I was a cute girl, but it wasn't until I was 11 or 12 that I noticed I wasn't built like the boys necessarily liked. My friends teased me for having a flat butt and a flat chest. Ultimately, this bruised my esteem. Did you know 44% of schoolgirls attempt to lose weight compared to only 15% of boys? And did you know 70% of girls ages 15 through 17 avoid normal daily activities, even like going to school, just because they feel bad about their looks? This type of negative self-thinking usually follows us into adulthood and affects our interpersonal relationships. It wasn't until I fell in love with me and accepted me for who I was that changed my life. Think and speak kindly of yourself. Join the movement. #GetNaked.
And welcome back. This is the Conversations with Kai Mann show. I'm your host, Kai Mann, and this is the show where we bridge the gaps one story at a time. And today we are talking with Calvin Thompson. We're talking mental illness, we're talking transformation, we're talking renewal of the mind. We are talking some good stuff here.
That's right.
I thank you for coming on the show. I know that you and I have kind of been, working together for probably about a couple years now. And it has been my pleasure to actually, to know you and to learn a lot, dealing with like different issues, dealing with transformation, dealing with renewal of the mind and thinking differently. Yes. Tell us something that that most people think, but that we're not so much as wrong about what we think or how we think, but there's another way to think it.
The most important thing that we can do, to borrow the words of Dr. Lorraine Kiefer Weatherspoon, She said, mind your mind. Think about what you think about. Because the thing about it, we have to remember that the thoughts that we entertain are so profound. They become prophetic because we operate on our dominant thinking. So when you get into the mode of thinking that it doesn't matter what you think, but it does. Because the thoughts that we entertain are the thoughts that affect our life and our well-being, our aura, disposition, everything about us. Thoughts really are things, and words do materialize. That's why we have to be careful about the thoughts that we entertain. And the things that we entertain are either make us or break us. So getting to the point of realizing that we are thinking creatures by nature. And in the Sanskrit language, the original name for man is to think. The most important part of our being is how we think, So getting into a reference and a realization that we have to be mindful of the thoughts that we hold on to because they impact on everything about us. So we formulate our opinion based upon how we think. So the thoughts process is so important. When you go to a psychiatrist, the first thing they listen to is how you think. And they ask you, when you went through a crisis, they assess you from the vantage point is that how has your life been going and what you've been thinking about. Because we can think ourselves into success or failure. We really can. Your thoughts are so profound. So be mindful of the thoughts that you entertain and what you yield to. Be mindful of what you do. Because that's all, what our actions and our thoughts are one.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. It has been a road for a lot of people to be able to change the way that they think.
Yes.
I think that most people who are in the realm of being what we would call successful thinkers have had such struggles in changing the way that they think. How do we can stay on that continuum, so to speak, of elevating our thoughts once we have changed our thought pattern, but to even elevate our thoughts even more? How do we begin to do that?
Well, our thoughts, our feelings, and emotions operate in unison. Unpleasant emotions and feelings reflect the thoughts that we have within the thoughts that we're harboring. So when we once realize the fact is that's why it says, peace, be still. Get quiet, get still, get consecrated. Get to a point where when you are alone within your thinking, you feel good about yourself instead of ruminating over your problems and your difficulties. Learn how to, it says, peace, be still. Remember the fact that this is that the way we think will impact on our well-being throughout our whole day. And we're thinking all day. We're thinking all the time. All the time we're thinking about something. So we're thinking about thoughts that can liberate us or thoughts that keep us in bondage. That's a choice we make. So you change your thoughts and you change your life. So once we get to the point where we feel good about ourselves, because we can feel good about ourselves. We can get to a happier core, but it takes a lot of work. And like they said, a problem cannot be changed at the same level of thinking that created it.
Right.
We must go to another level in our thinking. That's where the elevation comes in. We have to nurture the spirit and feast off of it, and be okay with it. It don't make you soft or and apt to think about things that are pleasant, because if you're harboring feelings of anger and vexation, then that reverberates throughout your body. But when you're thinking thoughts of pleasantly, love, and compassionate, then that yields you to another level of thinking, a better emotion, and more conducive towards your well-being. Because a lot of the problems that we have in our body reflect the way we think.
I think as far as when we are wanting to elevate our thoughts, our thought patterns based upon what it is that we already think,
That's right.
that there are more things that we need to do, like reading, like getting in meditation, and doing things of that particular nature.
That's right.
But I am so happy that you came on the show and that you blessed us with your presence.
Yes.
If any of our guests are looking to speak with you, how can they contact you?
Well, they can contact me on Facebook by using my name, Calvin Thompson. They can contact me on WordPress by using my name, calvinthompson.wordpress.com. Or they can contact me on Twitter by using Calcutta 417.
Awesome. Well, Calvin Thompson will have a new show that will be coming out, and that also will be on the Live Network, and that will be the Thompson Report. So you guys look for the Thompson Report to be coming out soon. Thank you so much, Calvin. I appreciate you for coming on the show.
Thank you, Kai. This has been a phenomenal experience for me. I'm looking forward to more. God bless you.
Thank you. And this has been the Conversations with Kai Mann show. Don't forget to check us out every Wednesday at 7 o'clock p.m. on WatchTheLiveNetwork.com.